Hey, wahala. This woman put water for my belly, turn am, turn am, turn am, turn am, you know. She brought in all her friends into it to the point that her friends had to even corner me one side and told me, look, this woman is like this, so she's petty like that. In fact, the reason why we brought her to you is because she's fought with all the other tailors that we know. You are the last hope, last option. Hi there, my name is Glory Penrakban GPA. Welcome to today's video. If you're new here, welcome to the channel and welcome to the Pendrelite family. In this channel, we talk all about fashion business, sewing tutorials, and DIY. If this is the kind of content you want to be seeing, please click the subscribe button and welcome. Today, guys, I want to give you people gist. Something happened. So, three customers walked into my store. Let's call them Mrs. A, Mrs. B, and Mrs. C. So, Mrs. A is my customer, right? We've done repeat business in the past. She's bought from me more than three times at the time she came in with those women. So, Mrs. B and Mrs. C are Mrs. A's friend. So, it turned out that what actually brought the three of them was because Mrs. B wanted a dress. So as a shop business babe, when these three women came in, I had ready to wear in my store and I had to, I must show them something so that they can buy. Even though Mrs. A brought Mrs. B for Mrs. B to place an order, a bespoke order, something specially made for just Mrs. B. Now Mrs. C did not quite want the dress, okay? Mrs. C just tagged along because she's a fashion lover and she likes good things, but she didn't have a need at the time. So Mrs. A brought Mrs. B. Mrs. B needed a dress. Mrs. C was just a friend who tagged along. So when they came in now, I noticed that I had a lot of ready to wear in Mrs. C's size, right? Mrs. B actually wanted something, don't forget, but it was supposed to be bespoke tailored just for her. But the ready to wear I had on my rack were mostly size 12, UK 12 for Mrs. B. I had things in the size of Mrs. A, but Mrs. A hardly buys ready to wear from me. She mostly places orders for what she wants. So I was really excited to show Mrs. C these things I had, of which Mrs. B was also looking through the rack just in case she would find something that would size her. But I knew that I didn't have anything in her size because she's quite big and super busty. So I was showing Mrs. C things I had, and the mistake I made here was that I was being sincere. I had set aside some clothes on my rack that were on sales. Now, are these clothes bad? No. Are these clothes out of style? No. These clothes, if nobody told you they were on sales, I could have still sold them at the price I should have sold them at. But they were on sales at the side of the rack, and coincidentally, they were exactly Mrs. C's size and her taste, because it's one thing for a client to see her size and it's another thing for a client to like that outfit she has seen in her size. So she loved them all. And somebody who did not plan to shop ended up buying everything in her size. So Mrs. B, it turned out that Mrs. B is, will I say petty or envious? Mrs. B just had a problem with the fact that these dresses were beautiful and they were only in Mrs. C's size. Mrs. A she knows her friend better, so she was trying to cover her, but I didn't understand. She kept telling me, I brought Mrs. B to come and make clothes, and instead of you to give Mrs. B clothes, you're giving Mrs. C clothes. I said, no, Mrs. B wants bespoke tailored outfits. I'm showing Mrs. C clothes on sales that are in her size, right? And Mrs. B, for some reason, just thought that it should have been hers. It should have been for her in her size. She should be the one. She even tried to squeeze into a couple of dresses that Mrs. C was going to buy just to. Oh, wahala. Anyway, I'm heading somewhere and there's a lesson to learn from this gist. So please just stick with me. So, to show you how petty Mrs. B was or is, Mrs. B ordered for almost everything Mrs. C bought on sales. She ordered for almost everything in her size. I'm like, okay. So are two friends going to be wearing because some of those pieces, some of the ready to wears I have in my store are very exclusive. I can make only two or three pieces of each, and sometimes just one-offs, right? Just one-offs. I might see some leftover fabrics in my store, and I'll just put this together and just make something that I might not want to replicate, or it's not my plan to replicate. I don't know if you get. So she ordered for almost everything Mrs. B had purchased from Mrs. C had purchased from me. Mrs. B ordered for almost everything Mrs. C had purchased on me that day on sales. I still took Mrs. B orders for all the other things that she had in mind before she came here. And I took Mrs. A orders as well. But don't forget, it was actually Mrs. B who wanted clothes before they walked in. Mrs. C bought because they were mostly on sales and she liked the designs she bought. So, people of God, they left. Mrs. B said they had to leave really soon and I should send my bill to her via WhatsApp, which I did. Do you know what Mrs. B said? Mrs. B said she was going to buy or going to pay the same price as Mrs. C did on clothes that were on sales for clothes that were going to be custom made or bespoke tailored for her, which is impossible. Mrs. C bought clothes on sales, don't forget. So it can't be the same price as a new dress. Those dresses have been here for a while. They were not bad though. Let me just say it again. If I have pictures of the designs still in my gallery, I would show you guys on the screen. Those clothes were gorgeous. In fact, they were too good to be true. That is why Mrs. C bought them all. When I mean all, that day I was happy. I was happy because my account was, you get. So I told Mrs. B that it's not going to be possible. Oh. It won't be possible that this is my price and that is that. She made a fit out of this thing. That why should it be? After all, I sold to her friend at this price. If I can sell at that price, then I can sell to her. I say, Ma, hey, God. Those clothes were on sales. Then her own too must be on sales. I say, how? Why? Where? Do you know what most of my clothes on sales mean? It means I'm just recouping back my cost of production. I'm making almost no profits on top of them. And that's because they've been here for a while. So why must I give you new clothes? Clothes that I have not yet produced. Don't forget, the time we produced those clothes that Mrs. C bought, cost of production was even lower than now. Cost of fuel was lower than it is now. So it's impossible, madam. I cannot give you these clothes at the same price. Hey, wahala. This woman put water for my belly, turn am. She brought in all her friends into it to the point that her friends had to even corner me one side and told me, look, this woman is like this, so she's petty like that. In fact, the reason why we brought her to you is because she's fought with all the other tailors that we know. You are the last hope, last option. Tolerate her. I'm like, no, ma, I can't tolerate someone who will be telling me the price of my products, right? And you know the funniest thing? This woman can afford to buy or pay a premium for outfits. I don't want to say much about her, but she get money. Her husband get money. She wears nice things. I know you people might say, oh, it's not because somebody has money that they take priority in. She wears nice things. She wears expensive things. So I know that she can pay a premium. She could have paid my price, but just because upon the first introduction to me, she had low money price. That is clothes that were on sales. So she made up her mind that that is the price she would always pay, even when it's a bespoke tailored piece, an outfit that is not on sale. She made up her mind and that is what she'll pay. To this date, we are no more doing business together because did I fuck up? Pardon my French. Did I mess up? Did I make a mistake? So where am I going with this? This is a very short video and I think somebody might learn a lesson or two from here. The truth is, I did not designate a rack. That is, it wasn't labeled on that rack. All outfits here are on sales. And those clothes that I sold to Mrs. C on sales, I have not published them anywhere on social media or WhatsApp to say they were on sales. I just had them there on my rack, and anybody who walks into my store who sees it and likes it, I'm like, oh, it's on sales. And most times, people always like things on sales. They will just buy them, So I wasn't bothered about really showing people on social media or WhatsApp that these things are on sales because I knew I was going to clear them as clients walking. The mistake I made really was seeing the caliber of these women. I shouldn't have given them those items on sales. I shouldn't have. It doesn't make me insincere, no. I shouldn't have. Those clothes were good. That is I didn't put them on sales because they are just basic or ordinary. No. I put them on sales because they had been here for a while and I just thought, let me get back my money and produce more things. That was why they were on sales. As they walked in, I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have. I should have just given them the normal price for those items. And would those women have paid? Yes. Mrs. C would have still bought. Maybe not everything, who knows? But she would have bought a lot. Would this have made Mrs. B think that I am a tailor who should charge that low? She wouldn't. She would have heard the real cost of this clothes and she would have known that, okay, this babe, they sold dress 25,000 or they sold dress 30,000. And that is how her mind would have been programmed that anything I'm making for her would not be less than that price. But because she saw items on sales for 12K or 10K, and she just thought, if she can give these beautiful clothes, these clothes that look so gorgeous at 12K, 10K, then she too must pay same price. So yes, that's one lesson I learned. Don't When you weigh and assess your clients when they walk in, if the cloth is on sales, my dear, give it to them at the original price. You can promise to give them a discount, but don't say it's on sales. It might mess things up for you. Number two, I have learned to deal with group customer. Those group of friends. I've learned that some friends are envious of some other friends, and when you give this one a discount and this one doesn't get a discount, not because you dislike her, but because the product she wants, there's no discount on that one. It can bring wahala, even among the friendship. Till this date, Mrs. B doesn't talk to Mrs. A. So I heard. Mrs. B doesn't talk to Mrs. A anymore just because they came to my store and Mrs. C was buying. Another thing is that one, I don't know if it's my fault or not. Try to have clothes in lots of sizes. Okay, most of my clients, my working clients who would buy ready to wear off my rack are size 14 and size 12. So I don't really look at making clothes in size 18 or size 20. There might be 16 every once in a while. So yeah, Mrs. B could not find any ready to wear in her size because I did not produce I don't produce lots of dresses for her size. So try your best to make dresses to cover a wide size range. Number three, your customers will push you. They will push you, they will test you. Because Mrs. B came in to see dresses at 12K and 10K on sales, Mrs. B thought she could push me hard enough for me to sew new dresses at same price for her. What psychology did she not use? What gimmicks did she not come up with? She even told me she was going to sew lots of dresses. But because I stand that kakaraka, I didn't allow myself to get enticed or get pushed. So when you know your pricing and you know how to price your product and services, no matter how they speak the English, you just know that you must be profitable in business. And if this price is going to make you run at a loss or merely break even, then it's not good business for you. Have you signed up for my fashion business mentorship program? There, I teach you how to price your product and services. I teach you how to make sure you are profitable in your business. So that when people like this come, they just know that I'm nothing for them. I teach you how to even place a price on your products when they are on sales. Look, in this post-Buhari economy, we must be profitable. We must be profitable. Thanks so much for watching. But before I go, I want you to check this video out here on the screen. You're going to find it very helpful. Bye.